do my thing and you do your thing. I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations. You're not in this world to live up to mine. You are you and I am I, and if by chance we find each other, it's beautiful. If not, it can't be helped. Amen.
Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My sermon this morning is titled Expectations, as I want to discuss our own expectations as we live in this world. Our own expectations of one another. I began with something that's called the Gestalt prayer. I do my thing and you do your thing. It was written in 1969 by a German psychotherapist named Fritz Perls. I used to teach general psychology. I used to teach it at a small college, a Christian Brothers college called Iona College, which is an institution that's famous in my family. That's where I met my darling wife, who's sitting in the background, Gabriella, who's here this morning. And so at Iona, I used to tell my students that Gestalt is a type of psychology that emphasizes personal responsibility and focuses on our experience in the present moment. While Gestalt psychology is a valid form of therapy, this statement, this prayer I just read, leaves me, as it should you, feeling very cold and lacks the acknowledgement and comprehension of an overriding force in this world that binds us together. One that religious people would call God, and specifically Christians see through the person of Jesus Christ. Too often in our human experience, we are inundated with surface and shallow relationships. I used her and she used me and neither one cared. I stole that from Bob Seger. But we all do that. Oh, let's do lunch. Oh, I love you. Oh, yes, nice. And it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Some of these things are so easy to say, even if we don't follow through. Surely this can happen in personal relationships between individuals, but it also happens between people and their commitment, or lack thereof, to organizations. Today, on this 15th Pentecost, we will be performing the rite of Christian initiation, otherwise known as baptism, for Savannah Rose Poland. Hold Savannah Rose Poland up so everyone can see her. She's the star right here today. So Savannah is going and has two godparents. And we have two godparents. One godmother, Jennifer, a good friend of Mom who was just married, I think, at the end of last month. And both were cheerleaders. Were you guys cheerleaders together? You were cheerleaders. And Tyler is both a godfather and uncle who are not only making a new commitment to Savannah, that's what the godparents are doing, but they're committing themselves to serving as the conduit to their godchild, to the Christian church in general, and hopefully to St. Mary's specifically. Now this is a first for me. Someone asked me, Lynn asked me before, have you done many baptisms? I've done so many baptisms. But this one in particular is a first. I'll tell you, over the years, I've gotten frustrated by parents and godparents who've simply seen this day as an excuse to dress up and throw a party. So I asked both Jennifer and Tyler to go beyond that, what the prayer book mandates. I think in the prayer book it says, will you see that this child is raised in the Christian faith and life? And write down some personal commitments that they are willing to make. This is not a first either. I've asked other godparents to do that. But it's the first time that it has been published in these personal promises in an actual service bulletin. So what we have here is an actual record of Jennifer and Tyler's promises. And they're going to be saying them, but they're here for the parents, they're here for Savannah, and they're here for us to see this is what they're promising to do. So we have an actual record of Jennifer and Tyler's promises. Savannah this morning is here to become a child of the way, which is what you and I are as well. Children of the way. The way, as we understand it, is to openly acknowledge and demonstrate that all of our human relationships are important. They're valid, no matter what we gain or don't gain from them. In fact, in the second part of today's gospel, Jesus talks about just this. He essentially provides a countercultural message that attacks what we in the 21st century call the pay-to-play system. That so many politicians, both good politicians and bad ones, live by this. That's the life's blood. This idea that social reciprocity is the backbone of the patronage system. And clearly it was present in the first century as well, and Jesus goes after the entire system. He's telling the host in the story, and us here today, that what is important is our commitment to the relationship we are in. Do we see God in the person sitting next to us? Or Jesus in that person we quickly pass by on the street each morning? There are, borrowing Charles Dickens' lines, great expectations, set up not by you or not by me, but by a bigger force than an individual. We have great expectations upon us. Do we recognize these great expectations of God and live by them? Or do we simply set up our own individual expectations and this works for me, so I'll do it this way? No matter the particular situation we find ourselves in, to be successful, one must have grit and courage to push through difficult times. Many schools, public, private, and charter, in the early part of this 21st century, will talk about character education. And thus people have been trying to identify what it is, and of course, how we can quantify it. What is character education? People will pay over $40,000, over $50,000 to live at the school where I work and to send their child to the petty school, because they will not only learn how to read, write, and compute and get into a good college, students will learn how to stick to problems and make ethical decisions along the way, or at least that's the hope. There's a woman you should know about. Her name is Angela Duckworth. Dr. Duckworth works at the University of Pennsylvania. I encourage you to look her up. She's on YouTube. It seems that everybody who's anybody is on YouTube. And she discusses a term, true grit. True grit, which is a phrase that has become quite popular amongst educators. Clearly, students who have a stronger character and are more committed to the goals that they set for themselves and demonstrate the determination, the true grit to reach these goals, are more likely to be successful than students who don't. So schools are trying to bottle it, and quite frankly, trying to sell it. But the larger, more important question is, what are you committed to? Is it simply your family? Is it your job? Perhaps your country? Your way of life? When we see ourselves and teach our children to see themselves as part of a larger community that transcends race, that transcends income level, that transcends the neighborhood in which we grew up, we begin to see our connection with everyone around us. Now, a century ago, in the early part of the 20th century, there was a medical doctor who was a professor at a different Ivy League college, one called Harvard University. His name was Richard Clark Cabot. You won't find him or me on YouTube. But he was also quite popular in this day and became famous for doing clinical work with outpatients at Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Cabot wrote a book called What Men Live By. And in it, he wrote, quote, "Every human being, man, woman, and child, hero and convict, needs the blessing of God through 4 gifts: work, play, love, worship. With these, any life is happy despite sorrow and pain, successful despite failure." So Dr. Duckworth in the 21st century tells us we need true grit to be successful. And Dr. Cabot 100 years ago told us we need to have work, play, love, and worship to find contentment. Perhaps they're both right. It would be great if we were able to teach that to Savannah. But what I particularly like about Dr. Cabot is that he puts our life in context in a community. Not just a community that says, I'm okay and you're okay, but a community that ascribes worth to a higher power. That's why we're here. We're here to ascribe worth to a higher power. We're saying it's more than just about me and you, but there is a higher power that's directing our lives. Central to our being, Dr. Cabot says, is a realization that there's more than just our satisfying our own self and working through our own small problems. Today's gospel from Luke 14, I mentioned the latter section of the gospel earlier. The whole thing can be summed up in one word. If someone comes to you today, later today, and says, you know, you read the gospel today, what's the gospel about? The gospel can be summed up in one word. It's about humility. Biblical humility runs completely counter to the predominant self-esteem teaching that seems to flood our modern world and church. An example is even from the 10 o'clock service to the 8 o'clock service. In the 8 o'clock service, you open up the prayer book. There's this prayer called the Prayer of Humble Access. And people say it, traditionally they said it over here, and they would kneel down, and most people kneel at 8 o'clock and say, you know, I'm not worthy to gather up the crumbs under your table. In the 10 o'clock service, in Rite 2, the more modern translation, they've recognized that this is not a good sell. So they sort of excised it out, and I'm sure there's theological reasons, but essentially what they've done is they've cut that part out of the service because they don't want to be saying the word that we're miserable offenders. They want it to be more that, you know, I'm okay, you're okay, God, please forgive me, give me some communion, let me go. In the beginning section of this parable, it is noted that Jesus speaks because he sees how the guests picked the places of honor at the banquet. Jesus' overall point is that we should not try and connive to receive greater honor, but rather it is awarded to us when we are truly humble and work towards our goal. All the time recognizing the one constant in our life is our Creator. So Savannah will presumably have hard times ahead of her, as we all do. This is not some magic science we're doing to inoculate her a little later when we go back there and do the baptism. Rather, we're hoping that through her parents, through her godparents, we're setting her on a strong foundation that will enable her to have courage and the grit to handle the problems she may encounter in life. And just as important as these specific promises that we read and hear, I hope that Jennifer and Tyler make sure that Savannah has work, play, love, and worship present in her life. If she does it, it will be much easier for her to recognize God in every soul she encounters, no matter the outward circumstances they're in. Will Savannah, will you and I see the temporary nature of our own circumstances, be they positive or negative, and their ever-changing nature? Remember the words of the following prayer. Lord, fill me with gratitude for all your love and mercy that you show me. And purify my love for others, that I may seek their good rather than my own benefit or gain. Free me to love others as you love. Never forget, church, that the only thing in our life that does not change is the abiding love of God. I'm going to ask us to stand and get out our hymnals, and we're going to sing hymn 662, after which we're going to go back.